The night was dark, and 10-year-old Amara's screams echoed through the village like the cries of a wounded animal. "Mama! Mama, please! Don't let him take me!" Her tiny fingers clawed at the dirt as a stranger's rough hands dragged her toward a waiting truck. Her eyes, wide with terror, streaming with tears, were fixed on her mother, standing in the doorway of their mud-brick home. But her mother, Zuri, did not move. She did not run to save her daughter. She did not cry out. She did not even look at Amara's face. Instead, Zuri counted gold coins in her palm, her lips moving silently as she calculated her payment. "Mama!" The truck door slammed shut. The engine roared to life, and as the vehicle pulled away into the darkness, Amara pressed her face against the window, watching her mother's silhouette grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. That was the last time Amara ever called her mother. But years later, when that same woman came crawling back, old, broken, and desperate, she did not recognize the powerful woman her daughter had become. And she certainly did not expect what happened next. What could possibly make a mother sell her own flesh and blood for a handful of gold? What kind of evil lives in a heart that would trade a child like livestock? And when karma finally came calling, would there be mercy or would there be justice? Stay with me, because this story will shake you to your core. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we need to go back to when life still held hope, when little Amara's world was filled with love, laughter, and the warm embrace of her father. Amara was born in a small village in West Africa, nestled between rolling green hills and golden savanna. Her father, Kwame, was a respected farmer, a man with calloused hands and a heart as vast as the African sky. He was not wealthy by the world's standards, but he was rich in what mattered most: integrity, kindness, and an unshakable love for his daughter. Every evening, after working the fields, Kwame would lift Amara onto his shoulders and walk through the village, greeting neighbors and telling her stories of their ancestors. "You see this land, my golden flower?" he would say, using the pet name only he called her. "Our family has worked this soil for generations, and one day it will be yours." Amara adored her father. He taught her the names of healing herbs, showed her how to read the clouds for rain, and told her that her worth was not in gold or beauty, but in her character. Her mother, Zuri, was a different story. Zuri was undeniably beautiful, tall, graceful, with high cheekbones and skin like polished mahogany. But beneath that beauty was a restless, dissatisfied heart. She had married Kwame hoping he would become wealthy. When he remained a humble farmer, contentment turned to resentment. Zuri hated the small house. She hated fetching water from the well. She hated that other women in the village had gold jewelry while she had none. And secretly, quietly, she began to hate the life she had built. Then tragedy struck. Kwame fell ill with a fever that no herb could cure. Within weeks, the strongest man Amara had ever known was gone, buried beneath the mango tree he had planted when she was born. To the funeral, she wept until no more tears would come. She clutched her father's worn farming hat and whispered, "I will make you proud, Papa, I promise." But while Amara grieved, Zuri was already planning. Without Kwame's protection, she was a widow, vulnerable, poor, and fading. Then a wealthy trader named Kofi began visiting the village, and his eyes fell upon the beautiful widow that he showered her with gifts, fabric, jewelry, promises of a big house in the city. But Kofi made one thing perfectly clear from the beginning. "I want no children from another man in my house," he said coldly. "If you want this life, you come alone." And Zuri, blinded by gold and ambition, made her choice. The night everything changed began like any other. Amara had spent the day helping neighbors harvest cassava, her small hands working alongside the village women who had taken pity on the orphan girl. She returned home tired but peaceful, expecting to find dinner waiting. Instead, she found her mother sitting with a strange man. He was tall, dark-skinned, with cold eyes that scanned Amara like a merchant inspecting cattle. His name was Mensa, and though Amara did not know it yet, he was a traitor of the worst kind. A man who collected children and sold them as servants to wealthy families in distant cities. "This is her?" Mensa asked, circling Amara slowly. She's small, but she looks strong enough. Healthy teeth. Clear eyes. Yes, she will do. Amara's heart began to pound. Mama? Who is this man? Why is he looking at me like that? Zuri did not answer. She stared at the floor, her jaw tight. Minsa reached into his pouch and pulled out a leather bag. He tossed it onto the table, and the unmistakable sound of gold coins rang through the room. Payment in full, he said. As agreed, Amara's blood ran cold. Mama, what was he talking about? What did you agree to? Zuri finally looked up, but her eyes were empty, hollow, like the eyes of a stranger. When she spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless, rehearsed. You are going with this man, Amara. He will take you to a family who will give you food and shelter. You will work for them. What? No. Mama, no. I don't want to go. Please. Amara lunged toward her mother, wrapping her arms around Zuri's waist, sobbing hysterically. But Zuri pried her daughter's fingers away, one by one, and pushed her toward Minsa. Take her, Zuri said coldly. Before I change my mind. Minsa grabbed Amara's arm with an iron grip. She screamed, kicked, fought with every ounce of her small body. But she was only 10 years old, and he was a grown man accustomed to breaking the spirits of children. He dragged her out of the house, into the night, toward a truck filled with other weeping children. Amara twisted her head back one final time, her voice raw from screaming. Mama, please, I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Don't let him take me. But Zuri had already turned her back. She was inside, counting her gold, dreaming of Kofi's big house and her new life, a life without the burden of a daughter. The truck door slammed. Darkness swallowed Amara whole. And in that moment, something inside her broke, and something else, something harder, began to grow. She made a silent vow to herself that night, tears streaming down her dusty face. I will survive. I will rise. And one day, she will know what she lost. But the gold Zuri clutched so tightly, it would become a curse she never saw coming. The truck traveled for 2 days, stopping only to give the children water and stale bread. Amara sat in silence, her knees pulled to her chest, watching the landscape change from familiar savanna to sprawling urban chaos. Finally, they arrived at a grand estate in a wealthy city, the home of the Okoye family. Mr. Okoye was a successful businessman who spent most of his time traveling. His wife, Madame Okoye, ruled the household with an iron fist and a heart of stone. She inspected the new servants like merchandise, her nose wrinkled in disgust. This one is too thin, she said, pointing at Amara. But she has clever eyes. Put her in the kitchen. And so began 8 years of torment. Amara woke before sunrise every day to scrub floors, wash dishes, and haul water from the well. She slept on a thin mat in a storage room, shared with rats and cockroaches. Her meals were scraps, leftovers the family dogs sometimes refused. Madame Okoye took particular pleasure in humiliating her. When Amara accidentally broke a teacup, she was beaten with a wooden spoon until her back bled. When she was caught looking at a book left on the table, Madame Okoye slapped her so hard her ears rang for hours. Servants do not read, the woman screamed. You are nothing. You will always be nothing. But Amara refused to believe it. Late at night, when the house was silent, she would creep to the garbage pile and rescue newspapers, discarded books, torn magazines. By candlelight, she taught herself to read, letter by letter, word by word, until sentences became paragraphs, and paragraphs became windows to a world beyond her suffering. She learned about history, science, business, and philosophy. She read about women who had risen from nothing to build empires. And with each page she turned, a flame inside her grew stronger. She was not nothing. She was surviving. She was learning. She was waiting. The other servants noticed something different about Amara. While they complained and fought among themselves, she remained calm, kind, and steady. When an elderly cook named Mama Efua fell ill, Amara nursed her back to health using herbs she remembered from her father's teachings. When younger servants were frightened, she comforted them with gentle words. Why are you so kind? Mama Efua once asked her. After everything they have done to you? Amara smiled softly. Because cruelty is their weapon. Kindness is mine. They want to turn me into something bitter. I refuse to let them win. Madame Okoye hated this. She could break Amara's body, but she could not break her spirit, and that infuriated her more than any disobedience ever could. Years passed. The frightened 10-year-old transformed into a quiet, resilient 18-year-old woman. Her body bore scars, but her eyes held fire. She had survived the worst humanity could offer, but she did not know that fate was already arranging the pieces for her deliverance. Little did anyone know, this servant girl's life was about to change forever, because sometimes destiny finds you in the most unexpected places. The Okoye family had been invited to the most prestigious event of the year, a gala hosted by billionaire industrialist Mr. Solomon Adeyemi at his legendary estate. It was an honor reserved for the elite, and Madame Okoye was desperate to impress. "We need extra servants," she announced. "The Adeyemi household expects perfection. One mistake, and our reputation is ruined." Amara was among those selected to serve at the gala. She was given a clean uniform, the nicest clothes she had worn in 8 years, and strict instructions. "Be invisible. Speak to no one. And do not embarrass me." The Adeyemi estate was unlike anything Amara had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. Gold-trimmed furniture filled rooms larger than the entire house she had grown up in. And everywhere, wealthy guests laughed, drank champagne, and discussed business deals worth more money than Amara could comprehend. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses and clearing plates, invisible as instructed. Then it happened that a commotion erupted near the grand staircase. Guests were screaming, backing away in panic. Amara pushed through the crowd and saw an elderly man collapsed on the marble floor, Mr. Solomon Adeyemi himself. His face was pale, his hand clutching his chest, his breathing shallow and labored. "Someone call a doctor," a woman shrieked. "He's dying," another voice cried. People froze. Security guards fumbled with phones. Precious seconds ticked away, but Amara did not freeze. A memory flashed through her mind. Her father, years ago, teaching her about a plant that grew near their village. "If someone's heart struggles," he had said, "these leaves can calm the storm until help arrives." She had seen that same plant in the Adeyemi garden earlier that evening. Without thinking, Amara sprinted outside, found the plant, and tore off a handful of leaves. She raced back inside, pushed through the stunned crowd, and knelt beside the billionaire. "What are you doing?" Madame Okoye screamed. "Get away from him, you stupid girl." Amara ignored her. She crushed the leaves between her palms, placed them under Mr. Adeyemi's tongue, and tilted his head to help him breathe. 1 minute passed. Then 2 and then, miraculously, color returned to his face. His breathing steadied. His eyes fluttered open. The room fell into stunned silence. When the doctors finally arrived, they confirmed what everyone had witnessed. This servant girl had saved Solomon Adeyemi's life. Later, when he was resting comfortably, Mr. Adeyemi summoned Amara to his bedside. He studied her face for a long moment, his aged eyes filled with something she could not name. "Who are you, child?" he asked softly. "You have the eyes of someone who has known great sorrow and survived." Amara lowered her gaze. "I am no one, sir. Just a servant." "No," he said firmly. "You are far more than that. I can see it." He had no idea that this servant girl would soon inherit everything he owned at Mr. Solomon Adeyemi was. Not a man who forgot kindness, especially kindness that saved his life. Within a week, he had investigated Amara's situation. When he learned the truth, that she had been sold as a child and spent 8 years in servitude, a cold fury settled in his heart. He summoned Madame Okoye to his office. "I am purchasing this girl's freedom," he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "You will release her immediately, or I will personally ensure that every business partner, every investor, and every social connection in your family depends on learns exactly how you treat the children in your household." Madame Okoye's face went pale. She sputtered protests, but Mr. Adeyemi silenced her with a raised hand. "The documents." Now, that afternoon, Amara walked out of the Okoye estate for the last time, not as a servant, but as a free woman, But Mr. Adeyemi did not stop there. He welcomed Amara into his home, not as a worker, but as a ward under his protection. He enrolled her in the finest schools, hired private tutors to accelerate her education, and gave her access to his vast library, a paradise for the girl who had once risked beatings to read discarded newspapers. Amara devoured knowledge like a starving person devours food. She excelled in every subject: literature, mathematics, economics, languages. Her teachers marveled at her brilliance. Her classmates envied her determination. But more importantly, Mr. Adeyemi began teaching her personally. He shared the secrets of his business empire, how he had built his fortune from nothing, how he had navigated betrayal and failure, how he had learned that true wealth was not in money but in legacy. "You remind me of my daughter," he told her one evening, his voice heavy with old grief. "She died 20 years ago. A fever took her, just like your father. I have spent 2 decades building this empire, but there has been no one to inherit my heart, until now." Amara wept. For the first time in 8 years, she felt what it meant to be valued, to be seen, to be loved. 3 years later, on her 21st birthday, Solomon Adeyemi made an announcement that shocked the nation, that he legally adopted Amara as his daughter and heir. "She saved my life," he declared to the press, "and she has restored my faith in humanity. Everything I have built belongs to her now, not because of blood, but because of her character." Amara was no longer the orphan who had been sold for gold. She was Amara Adeyemi, daughter of a billionaire, heir to an empire, and a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever been discarded. But even as she rose to unimaginable heights, she never forgot where she came from. And someone from her past was already hearing whispers about her rise. While Amara's star was rising, darkness was falling on the woman who had discarded her. Back in the village, Zuri's new life had crumbled into dust. Tea first. Everything had seemed perfect. She married Kofi, moved into his large house, and finally had the gold jewelry and fine clothes she had always craved. She thought she had escaped poverty forever. But Kofi was not the savior she imagined. Behind closed doors, he was cruel, short-tempered, and violent. He drank heavily and gambled away his money faster than he could earn it. When Zuri displeased him, he beat her without mercy. Within 5 years, his business collapsed. Creditors seized the house, the furniture, and every piece of jewelry Zuri had treasured. The gold coins she had received for selling Amara, Kofi had gambled them away in a single night. Eventually, Kofi abandoned Zuri entirely, disappeared with a younger woman, leaving his wife with nothing but debts and shame. Zuri was forced to return to her village, but the community that once knew her offered no welcome. Word had spread about what she had done. The women who used to greet her now turned their backs. Children whispered, which behind her as she passed. The elders refused to acknowledge her existence. She sold her own child for gold. They muttered, "There is no forgiveness for such evil." Zuri lived alone in a crumbling hut, surviving on scraps and the occasional charity of strangers who did not know her history. Her beauty faded, her body weakened, her spirit broke. Then one day, she overheard travelers speaking about a remarkable young woman named Amara Adeyemi, the adopted daughter of a famous billionaire who was building schools and hospitals across the region. That Zuri's heart stopped. She rushed to the market and found an old newspaper with a photograph on the front page. The woman in the picture was elegant, powerful, and radiant, but her eyes. Zuri would recognize those eyes anywhere. That it was her daughter. The child she had sold for gold was now one of the wealthiest women in Africa. Zuri collapsed to her knees. The newspaper clutched her chest. A storm of emotions overwhelmed her: shock, regret, jealousy, and a desperate, clawing hope that, if I go to her, she thought, surely she will help me. She is my daughter. Blood is blood. She cannot turn me away. And so, despite everything, despite the betrayal, the cruelty, the years of silence, Zuri gathered what little strength she had and began the long journey to the city. She went looking for her daughter's mercy, but would she find forgiveness or justice? Amara was in her study reviewing plans for a new children's hospital when her security chief interrupted. "Ma'am, there's a woman at the gate. She's elderly, very poor, and she claims. He hesitated. She claims to be your mother. Amara's pen froze mid-signature. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. For 15 years, she had imagined this moment. She had rehearsed what she would say, how she would react, what expression she would wear. But now that it was here, she found herself paralyzed. Bring her to the garden pavilion, she finally said, her voice carefully controlled. I will meet her there. 20 minutes later, Amara stood in the pavilion, dressed in an elegant white suit, her natural hair styled in a regal crown of braids. She looked every inch the powerful businesswoman she had become. Zuri shuffled in, supported by 2 guards. She was barely recognizable, thin, frail, wearing a tattered dress that hung off her bony frame. Her once beautiful face was lined with age and hardship. Her hands trembled. When she saw Amara, her eyes filled with tears. Amara, my daughter, my baby. She reached out her arms, expecting an embrace. Amara did not move. You may sit, Amara said coldly, gesturing to a chair. Zuri sank into it, still weeping. Look at you. So beautiful. So successful. I always knew you would be special. I always knew. Did you? Amara interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Did you know I would be special when you sold me to a stranger for a bag of gold coins? Zuri flinched as if struck. Did you know I would be special when I was sleeping on dirt floors and eating food meant for dogs? When I was beaten until my back bled for the crime of wanting to read? When I cried myself to sleep every single night, calling for a mother who never came? Each word was a hammer blow. Zuri shrank smaller and smaller in her chair. Amara, please, you don't understand. I was desperate. Kofi demanded. Do not speak his name to me. Amara's composure cracked, 15 years of pain erupting too. The surface. You chose him. You chose gold and jewelry and a comfortable life over your own child. You watched a stranger drag me into the night, and you counted your payment. Zuri was sobbing openly now. I know what I did. There is no excuse. I have lived with it every day. Kofi destroyed me. He took everything and left me with nothing. I have been punished, Amara. Believe me, I have been punished. Punished. Amara laughed bitterly. You think suffering erases what you did? You think losing money is equal to a child losing her mother? Silence stretched between them, heavy as stone. Then Zuri slid from the chair and fell to her knees on the cold pavilion floor. I'm not asking for money, she whispered. I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I do not deserve it. I only wanted to see your face one last time, to tell you that I am sorry, to tell you that I know I was wrong, and to tell you that, despite everything, I am proud of the woman you have become. Amara stared at the broken woman at her feet and felt the war inside her reach its peak. Amara turned away, walking to the edge of the pavilion where she could see the gardens her adoptive father had planted, gardens she had inherited when he passed peacefully in his sleep just 1 year ago. She remembered his final words to her, spoken just days before his death. My golden daughter, he had said, holding her hand in his weakened grip. You will face many enemies in this life, but the most dangerous enemy is not outside you. It is within. Bitterness, hatred, the desire for revenge. These things feel like power, but they are chains, and they will imprison you long after your enemies are forgotten. He had looked into her eyes with that piercing wisdom she had come to love. Forgiveness is not for them. Forgiveness is for you. It is the key to your own freedom. Amara had not fully understood then, but standing here now, with her mother's sobs echoing behind her, the meaning became painfully clear. For 15 years, she had carried this weight. The anger, the questions, the fantasy of one day confronting the woman who had thrown her away. She had imagined revenge in 1,000 different forms. Public humiliation, cold rejection, watching her mother suffer as she had suffered. But now that the moment was here, revenge felt hollow. Zuri was already destroyed. Life had already punished her. There was nothing left to take, nothing left to break. And if Amara chose hatred, she would have to carry it forever, a poison that would seep into every joy, every triumph, every relationship she tried to build that that the legacy I want? She asked herself, is that how I honor Papa and Father Adeyemi? She turned back to face her mother. Stand up, she said quietly. Zuri struggled to her feet, confusion and hope warring on her tear-streaked face. Amara took a deep breath. I will not pretend the past did not happen. I will not call you mother again. That title belongs to no one now. The girl you sold died in the back of that truck 15 years ago. Zuri's shoulders shook with silent sobs. But the woman I have become refuses to carry your sin in her heart any longer. Holding on to this hatred only keeps me chained to the worst night of my life. And I refuse to give you that power. She stepped closer and spoke words she never imagined she would say. I forgive you, Zuri gasped, falling forward, grasping at Amara's hands. I will arrange for you to have a small home in a quiet village, not here but far away. You will have enough money to live simply, and someone will check on your health. But you will not contact me. You will not tell anyone you are my mother. This is not reconciliation. This is release. Zuri could only nod, tears streaming endlessly. Now go, Amara said softly, and may you find whatever peace remains possible for you. Her choice that day would be talked about for generations in the years that followed. Amara Adeyemi became a name spoken with reverence across the continent. She expanded her father's business empire while simultaneously building something that would outlast any fortune, a legacy of hope. She established the Kwame Foundation, named after her biological father, dedicated to rescuing trafficked children, providing them with education, and helping them rebuild their lives. I was sold as worthless, she told crowds at charity galas. But someone saw my value when no one else did. Every child deserves that chance. She built schools in rural villages. She funded hospitals in underserved communities. She created scholarship programs for girls who reminded her of herself, hungry for knowledge, trapped by circumstance, waiting for someone to open a door. And she never, ever forgot the servants who had shown her kindness during her darkest years. Mama Efua, the elderly cook who had treated her like a daughter, was found and given a comfortable home with a full pension. Other former servants were tracked down and offered opportunities, jobs, education, fresh starts. You lifted me when I had nothing, Amara told Mama Efua at their reunion, embracing the old woman tightly. Now let me lift you. As for Zuri, she lived out her remaining years in a small cottage in a distant village, exactly as Amara had promised. She never contacted her daughter again. She never told anyone of their connection. But in her simple home, she kept a single photograph, a newspaper clipping of Amara at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, smiling radiantly, surrounded by children she had saved. Every night before sleep, Zuri would look at that photograph and whisper a prayer, not for herself, but for the daughter she had wronged. Thank you for becoming who you were meant to be, she would say. I'm sorry I was not the mother you deserved. When Zuri passed away, she died alone but at peace, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had lost and grateful for the mercy she had never earned. Amara did not attend the funeral, but she sent flowers, white lilies, her father's favorite. And on her wedding day, as she stood beside the kind, honorable man who loved every part of her story, Amara looked up at the sky and whispered words meant only for heaven. Papa, Father Adeyemi, I did it. Your golden flower bloomed after all. A gentle breeze stirred the air, and she smiled, knowing they were watching. She had been sold as nothing. She had risen as everything. And her story was only beginning. What can we learn from Amara's extraordinary journey? First, what you do to others will return to you. Zuri traded her daughter for gold, dreaming of riches, but she lost everything. Every coin she received became a curse. Karma does not forget. Second, your beginning does not define your ending. Amara was sold as worthless, treated as less than human, told she would never be anything. Yet she became one of the most powerful and respected women of her generation. Where you start is not where you have to finish. Third, true strength is not revenge. It is the power to forgive without forgetting. Amara did not pretend her mother's betrayal never happened. She did not invite Zuri back in her life. but she released the poison of hatred from her own heart. That is real power. Fourth, family is not only blood. Solomon Adeyemi was not Amara's biological father, but he loved her more than Zuri ever did. He proved that true family is built on love, not DNA. Now I ask you, could you have forgiven a mother who sold you? What would you have done when she came crawling back? Amara's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, our story is not over. No matter how deeply someone has hurt you, no matter how impossible your situation seems, there is always a path forward. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or moved you to tears, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below. Was Amara right to forgive her mother? Or should she have turned her away completely? And if you think this betrayal was painful, wait until you hear what happened to the princess whose stepmother stole her entire identity. That story is coming next.